Welcome back to the show, everybody. How about the SEC's jurisdictional land grab for crypto? Maybe we found a motive here. We're going to show it to you. CBDCs, combine that with a social credit score, and you've got a nightmare for citizens of the globe, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about that. And the reason we're going to talk about it is because SWIFT sets out a blueprint for central bank digital currencies. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook for exclusive content. $991 billion market cap for crypto. CoinPaprika, download that app, ladies and gentlemen. I love it. Bitcoin, $19,900. Ethereum, $1,300 plus. XRP is number 6 spot at 48 cents. 10.68% up on the 7-day, ladies and gentlemen. How about that one? Not your keys, not your crypto. Oh boy, I tell you, you talk about loving to work with somebody and loving being a customer too. You can now hook up your MoonPay in between in your Ledger account, buy crypto directly off the platform. It goes directly to your cold storage wallet. Don't believe me? Click the link underneath and give it a try for yourself. Pretty remarkable. Prosecutors in South Korea have frozen $39.6 million of crypto owned by CEO Do Kwon from the Terra Luna collapse. We'll keep you posted. Not sure if he's still going to the mall. This is for fun. Mr. I says here, so if Brad Garlinghouse isn't doing what we all think he's doing, what is he doing? 1, opening account for Kygo, Towboy for Kansas, because obviously Brad went to Kansas, and Larson's assistant, or jet setting for fun. Most people chose jet setting for fun, but Brad Garlinghouse chimed in for fun as well. He said, Towboy for the win, and then put, I think that's for Jayhawks right there. So shout out to him for playing along. That is pretty fun. Not often that you get somebody to be that interactive with the Twitter space. It's unbelievable. Look right here. This was from Elon Musk 16 hours ago. Buying Twitter is an accelerant to creating X, the everything app. Oh my, what brings me to this ProCoin article. If you're not following ProCoin News, I don't know what you're doing, but you're missing it. It is the Drudge Report of crypto. By 3 to 5 years, he said, purchasing Twitter will accelerate X by 3 to 5 years. He named his kid X. He named his car X. He named a couple companies X. Think about SpaceX. That's unbelievable. Oh, and did I mention XRP starts with X? And Elon was the founder of the PayPal Mafia. You guys remember that? DAI did a huge piece on all of this probably a couple years ago. Just a huge coincidence, I'm sure, says ProCoin News, but this is quite intriguing to me. I do think suddenly about face, which we predicted all the world's a stage, and we're agreeing to buy Twitter and close immediately for the originally agreed upon price. How about that one? Game, set, match, checkmate. Boy, I tell you, this is going to be an interesting couple years coming here, ladies and gentlemen. No doubt about that. This is an interesting tweet from Molly Elmore here. She says, what? BlackRock has taken over the Federal Reserve? This is from Rudy Havenstein here. It says, the acquisition of the Federal Reserve by BlackRock is expected to close within 30 days. CNBC. What? The Federal Reserve Bank of New York hired Richard Ostrander as general counsel of head of legal group. In this role, he will also be a member of the bank's executive committee and will serve as deputy general counsel of the Federal Open Market Committee. Ostrander will join the New York Fed in November of 2022. He's currently the managing director in legal compliance at BlackRock. Well, you know, I don't know if it's that intent, but I do know it points at the very least to the incestuous relationships between the Federal Reserve, government agencies, the Goldman Sachses, the BlackRocks, the JPM, right? All of these things are so together. Something I believe needs to be done to separate that issue. I really do. I think one of the things you can do is to make sure that somebody can't be a career appointee or a career politician. I think those terms should be abolished as a possibility of a career. James Melville says here, central bank digital currencies and social credit systems explain, show this to anyone who still thinks this is a conspiracy theory. It's time to take the blinders off or blinkers off before it's too late. You know, there is a pro side and then there is a con side to all of this digital revolution that we're in. And this is why I believe it's taken so long to really bring to the fore a digital dollar, which I believe could be, for retail at least, the USD coin. This would begin to start to create this multi-layered system of digital protocols and assets that separate us from directly dealing with the Federal Reserve as an account and a central bank digital currency, I believe. But in order for that to come full circle to our benefit, I also believe that we need to see a value protocol or value protocols, like example, XRP Ledger, XLM protocol, things of that nature that really do the things they say they can do, and be adopted and given the constitutional rights and standards to all, certainly U.S. citizens that use it, and I would like to say citizens for the globe, to have that privacy right to use and move digital money. It's a very real thing. But let's listen to this, because this is a downside, and we got to know that, just like we got to know the upside.
A little bit far-fetched, and you might be thinking that this kind of authoritarian control over your money is not going to be anything that we'll see in the future. Unfortunately, this is already implemented in the world. In China, the government is already able to program what its citizens can and cannot spend their money on. Over the last few years, they've limited millions of people's ability to buy things like train tickets, passports, and luxury goods. They're able to do this because of China's intense social credit system that links each person's identity and actions to their bank account, allowing the government to see and to control everything a citizen does with their money. And it seems like the West is paying attention. In nations like Sweden, South Africa, and Canada, trials of programmable central bank currencies are already underway. In fact, almost half of the world's nations are at some stage of implementing this kind of programmable money, meaning no matter where in the world you live, this technology is likely only a few years away. Okay, so how does programmable money tie in with the personal carbon limit? Well, it all comes down to whether or not you've gone over your monthly usage, and if you have, there are two possible case scenarios for that. The most openly talked about penalty for a person going over their individual carbon limit is that they'd simply get charged for doing so, just the same as what happens to large companies today. Taken too many car trips this month, or bought a little bit too much meat? In that case, you'd simply get a bill at the end of each month from your government, so you can pay the price of being a naughty citizen. As your entire carbon usage would be tracked by a government CBDC, there would be no way to hide how much carbon you've used. And since they now also hold the keys to your money, they won't even need to send you a bill for your excess usage. Potentially, they'll just automatically pull your fine from your bank account.
And how about that for a notion? You know, there is a dark side to all of this. I really do say, and we got to be aware of it. Now, SWIFT sets out the blueprint for central bank digital currency network. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's said really well right here. SWIFT has formally announced that they're using blockchain currencies for cross-border payments. That's exactly what I'm hearing too. You take a look at this article. It lays out, obviously, we know 90% of the world's central banks are now using or trialing or looking into central bank digital currencies and other complexities of it. There's been huge tests that have been successful that have done for the last 8 months. It says here, the idea is that once scaled up, banks may need only one main global connection rather than thousands if they were to set up connections with each counterpart individually. We believe that the number of connections needed is much fewer, said Kerrigan. Therefore, you are likely to have fewer breaks in the chain and you are likely to achieve greater efficiency. Again, this comes back to the Jevons paradox. William Stanley Jevons, right? The standardization of the financial system, just as we've seen from the Industrial Revolution and steam engines, and just like we've seen from the shipping container industry, right? And now we're seeing it in the financial industry. They go on to talk about here. Let me read the rest of this because you're going to want it here. It says the trial also tested different underlying CBDC technologies known as distributed ledger technologies. That's where you get into, was XRP and the XRP ledger in that part of the test, right? Because we know that Enbridge does describe at least the XRP ledger as one of those possibilities for that scenario. Very interesting stuff here. There's a separate trial too carried out alongside of Citi, Clearinghouse Clearstream, Northern Trust on tokenized assets, traditional assets like stocks and bonds transformed into digital tokens that can then be issued and traded in near real time. I mean, this is fantastic that they're admitting this stuff openly to us, that this is taking place, right? Let me keep going very quickly here. It says some countries like Bahamas and Nigeria already have CBDCs up and running. China is well advanced with the real-life trials on e-yuan, while central bank's umbrella group BIS Settlement has also been running cross-border trials. Swift main advantage through this existing network is already usable in over 200 countries, connects more than 11,500 banks and funds. Belgian-based firm has gone from being virtually unknown outside of banking services to household name this year after it cut most of Russia banks off of its network as a part of the Western sanctions. The country's invasion of Ukraine, Kerrigan said that the kind of move could also happen in a new CBDC system, but doubted whether it would stop countries joining one. I found that interesting. Ultimately, what most central banks are looking to do is provide us with a central bank digital currency for the people, the businesses, and the organizations in their jurisdiction. So a solution that's fast and efficient and that gains access to as many countries as possible would seem to be an attractive one. And I don't mind saying what else would be an attractive one is being able to say that your token, your dollar, your CBDC is more private than any other CBDC out here. That, to me, would really, really draw a lot of desire to hold that asset, wouldn't it? There's one other spot in here I wanted to find to give to everybody here that Swift's head innovation, Nick Kerrigan, had said in trials, which will be followed by more advanced testing over the next year, resembled a bicycle wheel where 14 central and commercial banks, a bicycle wheel, spoke and hub. Well, take a look at this. Well, take a look at that right there. Does that look like a spoken hub to you? That's what that looks like to me, doesn't it? I'm not saying that that means that it's XRP or the XRP ledger, but as a speculator and investor in this space, it makes it promising to me to want to find out more. That's for sure. All right, now let's take a look at this. Now, we know to go along with the whole idea and understanding that Swift is rolling out its blueprint for central bank digital currencies, this is where everything, the standardization of the ISO 20022 language becomes a game changer. In a recent speech, Bank of England's Dave Ramsden says the same thing. Because this standardization plays an integral part in upgrading the Bank of England's hard payment infrastructure, making it so there's uniformity, standardization, and no confusion in the labeling of these new assets that ultimately will be brought in. But I want to remind people that the November timeline for Swift to go live with 20022 does not guarantee, this is not to put ice water in your veins, but it does not guarantee that there will be digital assets being used for settlement at that moment. But it begins to clear the path for it. And this really reaffirms here what happens this November. I believe that we see that standardization move to in the language message format. That harder push really goes forward between now through 2025, right? November 2022 to 2025. We see that move happen. But that is to get the messaging compliance there and the standardization to be able to bring these new options for settlement into the fore in that messaging language, I believe. We'll keep an eye out for it, but it doesn't mean they're going to use the asset in November. So keep that under your hat. Now, this, I covered highlights from this interview and conversation. Great conversation here from Eugene, from Compound Witness, I believe it is, and David Schwartz, obviously. And he talks about in this clip the top-down approach and how the internet was first adopted by the government and the military. Now think of that, because this is different. We already have the internet, but the internet was adopted from the top down. We're seeing a bunch of little bottom-up things, and he did say later on in the interview, shout out to David for that they're pursuing really for the candle from both ends, working towards the middle here. They're coming from the bottom up and the top down. And that's the best way to go about it, he remarks. But I want to give you this clip because I think it speaks to the idea and understanding of we get clarity in this case. And as he says, the ending is not yet written. If regulators step in, and so all that we're fighting over is the past, that's going to be a much better place for the innovation in the United States. It certainly is. And the possible adoption of a value protocol, I believe.
I'd love to hear about the founding days Ripple.
Yeah, at that time, so that was probably mid to late 2011. Sort of two cracks were emerging in the Bitcoin narrative, such as it was at the time. Obviously, the narrative was, most of the people were technical enthusiasts. They were very interested in the technological end, and they weren't as savvy about how to drive adoption. The only strategy that anyone could think of was a grassroots strategy. And that's not how the internet got adopted, right? The internet was adopted by government and military first. So it's a and that's not how the internet got adopted, right? The internet was adopted by government and military first. Kind of the very earliest focus, and I think that kind of matured between 2011 and 2014, this kind of focus of we really need to solve payments. And if you think about any other use case, you think about an NFT. Well, I want to buy it and I want to sell it. Think about a loan. Well, I want to pay the loan back. And I want to get paid the amount of money I borrowed. All of these other use cases need great payments. And so we just sort of laser focused in on payments. And I think the other thing that we did different from the very earliest days was everybody else, including us in the beginning, had this ground up strategy. If you don't have a strategy, your strategy is get everybody to use the thing that I think is great. And I think a lot of companies are still pursuing that. But I think there's also a sort of top down strategy. And that's kind of what the internet did. The internet got governments to adopt it. They got universities. They got sort of big players. And so we decided, what are the biggest players? They're banks. And we went after banks. We probably should have aimed a little bit lower than that. The problem with banks is obviously banks are a big deal. Any crypto partnership with a bank is a big deal. But the problem is banks are slow moving. And they're not, and the bigger they are, the less interested they are in innovation. The very biggest banks talk about how important innovation is, but really, if they could push pause on technology, they would. Why, right? Why would they not want to freeze time where they're now right at the top? And so aiming just a little bit lower, you have companies like non-bank financial institutions, payment service providers. These are companies that have the resources to make a big difference. Scoring one of them using a cryptocurrency-based system matters. It's not you don't have to get thousands and thousands of them.
I mean, every year there's just so much more happening, right? It's certainly not resting on your laurels, and I cannot wait to see the things that you personally, as well as Ripple overall, continue to build to help this industry grow. And for it to flourish. So thank you so much for spending the time.
Thanks. It was a pleasure talking to you. And, that ending is not written yet. If regulators step in and so all that we're fighting over is the past, then that's going to be a much better place for innovation in the United States. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed is right. And, you think about why the SEC is working so hard. First of all, to go to what David said there, we haven't seen the government or a military really adopt this technology, this fourth industrial revolution. And maybe that's what this case is about. I do believe that is certainly a perception and angle and reality of this case. If it's done right, they can argue over what happened in the past, but if you get clarity going forward, I think you're going to see the government and military adopt some of these protocols for uses. And that top-down approach is going to come in a flood when it happens, maybe even in the flip of a switch. But coming to this, I've always wondered if this could be one of the SEC's motives to rule all of crypto. Big Skinny first sent this to me a while, and shout out to Ocean Camera Spray, who sent it as well. What are the SEC and FINRA fees? Trading activity fee, a TAF, are fees charged on the sale of any stock. These fees are automatically deducted from the points of any stock sale and only occur on the sale of stocks. Well, that's June 6, 2022. You have to ask yourself, if the majority of crypto is ruled securities, is the SEC just power grabbed the TAF fee for every crypto transaction? Sounds like motive to me. Look, that's going to do it for me. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. It's just my digital perspectives. That's where we are on this day. I'll catch all of you on the next one.